When did you start climbing Mount Sophia?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, it's funny, like there's been a bunch of different points. There's been a bunch of different points in my life that I could point to as points that I started to get more serious about thinking carefully. And I suppose I started thinking carefully before I started living carefully.
Hmm.
Um, but probably both. Like the point that I usually talk about is in 2017, my brother-in-law gave me a copy of 12 Rules for Life. And there was something about particularly the idea of, let's see, how does he say it? It's the treat yourself like somebody worth caring about,
Hmm.
and then tell the truth or at least don't lie. Those two, I had always I had always tried to do the good thing for the sake of something else in a sense. You know, I hadn't really tried to do the good for the good sake until I read that chapter on treat yourself like somebody worth caring about. And somehow I think that helped to shift that for me. And then the the idea of telling the truth or at least not lying. I had also tried to be honest as a means to an end as well
Hmm.
before that. And so I think there was something about means and ends and understanding virtue and living well and doing the good thing, being honest for their own sakes. Yeah, the intrinsic versus the consequential, I guess. And I think, I mean, I couldn't have talked about it like that then for by any means, but um, that was really the point that things really started to take off for me, I think.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. So let me follow up with the same exact question, but the emphasis is different. Uh, when did you start climbing Mount Sophia, the podcast?
Oh, nice. There we go. The podcast, the channel. Yeah, so I started that in what 20, I think I started in 21. So I had really been enjoying the work of John Vervaeke, and it had a massive impact on me. And so I was supporting him on Patreon, and I reached out to him and we had a conversation. It was a really good conversation. And he was like, hey, I'd love to have you on my Voices with Vervaeke. And so I did that. And at around the same time, I had started meeting people through X or Twitter as it was then. Um, and I had a few conversations with people, specifically my friend Steve. Um, there were it's just like, man, this is amazing, right?
Hmm.
And so I really created the channel as sort of just a space to, it felt like they were good enough conversations that somebody might want to listen, and I've never had a goal of sort of building anything. There's a lot of people that I've met since in the podcast space where they have a very intentional, they're really trying to build a base of people who are watching them. They're trying to make it a career or something. Many people, they want to quit their job and do podcasting, and as fun as that sounds, um, I don't know. That's never really been my goal with it. For me, it was always just, hey, I can have great conversations with people, and hopefully some of them are good enough that somebody is interested in listening to them. And that seemed to be the case. Like, especially, you know, uh, especially for some people, they seem to really enjoy some of them. So then I just kept doing it, and once once kids came to my life, I haven't done it as much, but that's a little bit of the background of climbing Mount Sophia.
Yeah. I think it's such an interesting way of communicating because there is something. I mean, obviously, it's extremely mediated the way that we are communicating right now. There are many different technological components that are making this possible, and yet it's extremely connective. Like in some way, it really does the job. And so, uh, but even still, like the greatest, most popular podcaster currently is Rogan, and he insists on the in-person conversation. But all of that being
Yeah.
said, the dialogos, as Vervaeke would put it, but like the conversation that you have between two people or three or four is uh it's almost not technological, but it's one of the greatest things that humanity's ever been a part of. And it makes sense to me because I have a Christian, worldview. So God speaks in the beginning and things occur. And so this is sort of like just this is the way that it is that he is, and then that it is because of him, and the way that we are. Talking is something that's super, super important to me. And language and being specific, but also being general, abstract. Um,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
think that uh, as I asked you the question, I was, narcissistically reflecting on why did I start my podcast? And I think for
Yeah.
me, there's a version of an answer that's like sort of an outreach, actually, because
Mm,
I didn't know anything about the TLC except
mm.
all of the people that they all watched. So I was on the outside watching the same thing, or on the other side of the screen, or something like watching exactly what they're watching. And so, like a month ago, I got connected with Gray Hamilton and
Yeah.
a
Nice.
bunch of the other people. And so that's been really fun for me. And it's really been the culmination of this journey of my podcast. It started in February of this year. And
Oh, nice.
so it's been successful insofar as, I've gotten to connect with people like yourself and like other people.
Yeah.
Um, and I do want it to be successful, but I don't want it to be like exciting or pandering to
Mm-hmm.
just sort of the lowest common, like I don't want it to be
Yeah.
marketable necessarily.
Yeah. Yeah.
But not like in like a cool artist kind of way. It just
Yeah.
is what it is. And then
No.
the people that like it are attracted, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's good. Like, I certainly don't mean to put down anybody who's intentionally trying to build something because I think that's really good and meaningful. It just hasn't necessarily appealed to me that much. But I do
Yeah.
think that one of the things, if I am hearing you correctly, what I hear you trying to avoid is you don't want to begin creating something that's sort of an act,
Yeah.
just in order to like you don't want to sacrifice any of the goodness, or you certainly don't want to drop the aspect of dialogos just so that you can have more views or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Because like Vervaeke, when he talks to James Filler, I don't know how many views that actually has, but I do know who the audience is, not and who it is. And so
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
that. And not to say like I can't even read Filler's books. I tried really hard, and I'm in the middle of it. I'm still trying. So we're climbing the mountain, but
Yeah, that's
it
right.
is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
I don't have any philosophical uh, training in any sense, so it's really like
Yeah.
piecing it together. It's a classic case of Protestantism. I feel like like
Yeah.
uh, I'm just making it
It
up as
takes a
I
long
go.
time. It
Yeah,
takes a long time to sort of muddle around in the waters to just get get to where you can read, to where you can see through the words, instead of just bouncing, sort of sometimes I get that washing machine effect where you just
mm,
feel like you're just as you're starting to get the logos of what somebody's trying to say, you get bounced off of something that you have no idea what it means. And you
yeah,
got to
yes.
reread the same sentence 20 times. And this
You live
book,
in the Pacific Northwest, right?
yeah, I do. I live in Oregon. I was just going to say this book, Aspects of Truth, is a fantastic book, but I have very much the same experience reading that. I'm
Yeah.
still being washed in that one. But yeah, I live
Yeah.
in Oregon.
Uh so the Bible Project then? I mean, not even just geographically, but
Yes,
from
yes,
okay.
yes, yes.
I had this experience with going through the Bible Project resources. I started in the shallow end, and then very quickly I was like, okay, okay, I know all this stuff, and they had classroom stuff, so I dove into that, and it was like way over my head. But then slowly but surely, he does such a good job, Tim Mackey, of walking you through ancient Hebrew literature, and then how they do their poetry, and then sort of from beginning. Well, I don't even know if he's finished Genesis yet, but I got through the Abraham section, and so from Genesis through Abraham, I have this. It's sort of like it's just very accessible, but like a 101 maybe, or maybe a 201 on these Hebrew themes in the Hebrew Bible. And it's really, really useful because then as I read like Gethsemane, I could see, aha, this is very much like the Garden of Eden, and I can see the correlations that brought people to, canonize the Gospels and really even like, I can imagine this is what Matthew was thinking when he's writing this story down because he's so familiar with these stories. That's how I feel. Like I need a Tim Mackey for philosophy. I feel like because there are so many rich Western philosophical concepts that come through such a lineage that I'm completely unfamiliar with. Like when Vervaeke speaks, he always says the genealogy, like the part you skip in the scripture, he says each step of that all the way back because he's immersed in it. And
Yeah.
so I think like obviously you and I like to engage with him, but he
Yeah.
engages with the text at a very different level.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think, philosophy, I like my discovery has been very much the feeling that, it's like a fish in water, right? Not knowing what water is. You know, so many people, especially in the modern world, have no idea what philosophy even is. And even if they hear the word, right, it sort of just strikes them as something that, sort of nerdy people do in college and can't get jobs,
Yeah.
right? And so it's sort of, it's sort of hand waved away. But the reality is that, everyone has a philosophy, and it's and you're running a program, right? And if you don't know what the program is, you're going to be bumping into all sorts of things and causing yourself all sorts of problems that you can't figure out why you can't fix them. And yeah, it's so funny how few of us have any sort of capacity to even think on the level that you need to. And I mean, you mentioned John. Like, I'm by no means an expert on any of this stuff, but I feel that I rarely run into things aside from just particular ways of wording things. I rarely run into things I don't have any capacity to like at least vibe with, in a sense, right? Like I can at least pick up a good deal of the meaning, I think, most times I read. So for me it really was John Vervaeke through all his stuff, but especially the Awakening from the Meaning Crisis series, that I just began to develop that. You just had to develop a vocabulary, and his vocabulary is so extensive, and he is so precise about how he uses it. And like you said, he's so good at giving you the genealogy of a concept and tying it both to the semantics and sort of imagistically into the way of seeing the world that's associated with it. Um, yeah, I mean, I think in a sense, like John taught me to see philosophically, I think.
Hmm, that's beautiful. I'm sure that uh, I think that that's some of his goal, not that he would be so presumptive to say that he could teach people to see, but I think that he truly does uh, love to pass these things on, like as a good teacher, one of the things that you were just
Yeah.
making me think is the way that uh, to use him as a shared example that we would understand. I think probably some people that are watching this aren't familiar with him in particular, but one of the things he does so
Yeah.
well is deal with something phenomenological. So like at a level that we all encounter, And then he'll pull on the references throughout history, the different traditions, religiously and philosophically, to say that's what this person is saying and that's what this person is saying, like in reference to whatever it is that's at hand in the conversation. And I think that's one of the things that's so important to me. I was going to ask you, are you familiar with Dallas Willard?
Yeah, not closely. Like
Okay.
I know of him, but he's sort of a fringe figure for me. But yeah, I know of him and I know a bit about it.
Yeah. So I just had this experience, and I think it was maybe similar to I didn't know about David Schindler, DC Schindler, until I watched him on your channel, and so I've been sort of like working my way through the episodes you did with him because they're sort of a string of conversations, like you pick up where you left off. So I missed one, and today I listened to it, and it was the one where you got to know him, and you were asking him like, "What's your story?" And so it was based on this book, Freedom from Reality.
Yeah.
And so that sounds like a book that I have to read. But it also sounded to me like a book that really deeply shaped you, transformed you. And so
Yeah.
I was trying to lay all that out to say that The Divine Conspiracy by Dallas Willard was a book that did that to me. And
Hmm.
one of the things it really did was kind of lay the, I guess, philosophical, but even I'm going to use the word phenomenological. It was like my experience was transformed, but
Yeah.
also aligned
Nice.
with, there was an alignment with his language to what I was experiencing. And so that's kind of a cool thing of like me coming into alignment with his experience. But the groundwork it laid was just that like God is reality. And that thought has been sort of with me for the past, it's
Hmm.
probably 4 years now. And I've just been trying to like exhaust that. I don't think I can, but like to live in that
Yeah.
and communicate that. And um anyway, so with that, he was able to sort of send me on this trajectory. But one of the things that I was connecting back to you, what you said, is that everybody has a philosophy. He says that everybody has a spiritual formation. And so he's
Yeah.
really big into the spiritual practices or disciplines.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that is that it's not really a question. I'm just going to pass the ball back to you. The
Yeah.
the uh the way that your life sort of must align with your philosophy or your spiritual beliefs, I guess. I don't want to make that
Yeah.
distinction because I think you are familiar with Jordan Peterson and I am well versed as well. So there should be
Yeah.
no distinction there between your beliefs and
Yeah.
how that plays out in your life.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. I love what you said there about reading Dallas Willard's book. You know, that sense, like the sense I got there was transformation, right? And I think, something that's been with me as we've been talking here is the idea of like, well, why do you do this? Why have a YouTube channel or podcast and why talk to all these people? And a big part of it is I think, there's those of us that are really finding deep transformation because we are now able to, with the internet, with so much more connectivity, we're finding connections that maybe a lot of people didn't before. And in some sense, you have your first tier of people who are like the teachers leading the way, right? Your John Vervaeke's, your Pageos, your DC Schindlers, right? And they're sort of giving you material that then as you come to it as a seeker, right? You come to it and it's sort of like you said, it changes phenomenologically the way that the world presents itself to you. And when you have a moment like that, a transformation like that, like you pick up that scent and it's I mean, at least for me, you can't let it go, right? Like you don't once you get that turn towards a deeper connectedness with reality, like what else are you gonna do, right? Like
Yeah.
I try to sit and watch football sometimes and like I like football and I would like to watch football, but like when I could be reading something else that's going to give me more insight into the world and how to make my own life better and the people around me better. Like I just it changes the flavor of the world. I guess is what I'm trying to say. And
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
I think that I think that transformation, right? Like becoming who you could be. Like, I mean, what else are you gonna live for, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. When did
yeah,
that become important to you? Just to go back to sort of the beginning, like when did you start climbing Mount Sophia? When did it become important to you to become who you could be? Because it seems like that's very important to you. You're very, like from what I've heard you say about just being a dad, you're very
yeah,
circumspect about your part in the world.
yeah. I mean, in some sense, it's probably too much, right? Like that's what I've been
Yeah.
working on recently, is to try to lean back more into grace, right, and recognize that God uses broken things, and it's not necessary to become perfect in order to be a saint, right? In some sense, being a saint is like getting right enough with your own brokenness so that God shines through it,
Mm,
maybe.
mm.
Um, because I think I don't know what is it. I think I just really maybe it's a personality trait as much as anything, but I just really want to do the best I can at everything. And I think I always have. Like it's just
Conscientious.
I yeah. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And I think, at some point a lot of it was Vervaeke and Peterson. Um in that sense of, like Peterson likes to say, right, what the hell else are you gonna do?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that just really sank in for me. There was the point in my life that I really started coming into all of this stuff. Like it wasn't like my life was going poorly or I was at rock bottom or anything like that. But I had some habits that weren't serving me well. Like one of them was that I played a lot of video games, right? Like there was this game called World of Tanks that I loved to play, and I would spend hours and hours playing it. I don't know how many hours I played it, but it was too much. Um,
I'll shout out
and
Frump here. He listens to the podcast and he likes World of Tanks uh
it's
quite a bit.
it's it's a great game. I
Yeah.
I, I loved it, but yeah, I haven't played in years now. But um, yeah, I think there was just this sense of like, man, especially the points at which my it became clear that my wife had a hard time with me doing that because she would have
Mm,
liked to be with me instead of me being on my computer playing tennis. Um, but I craved it, right? And it was challenging for me to move all of that, and I didn't know how to shift my desires. Really, that maybe that's a bit part of it. It's like I didn't know how to get my desires to align with um I don't know, I guess what my soul wanted.
mm.
Um and so in some sense, well, and this circles back then to that last piece that you handed me there, which is, everybody has their spiritual formation that they live through and their philosophy is sort of the structure of that. And you can have whatever opinions you have about what you think of the world, but um yeah, like you said, like Peterson says, you discover your beliefs, you discover your philosophy. And for me, for the last several years, it's been a lot of discovering. This is part of why that book you mentioned, Freedom from Reality, was so huge for me. You know, I recognized that my notion of freedom was a modernist idea,
Mm.
modernist ideal of individual liberty. And I recognized that that was not at all, like Schindler was able to show me in that book just how deeply that goal and ideal, because freedom is such this ideal, right? Like you can't live in America and not have freedom sort of seeping in your bones, right? And it was such this ideal that I held, and I realized that it was completely upside down.
Mm. Yeah.
And it was obstructing my ability to deeply desire the life that I actually have.
Earlier you were mentioning that the the impulse to perfect yourself and that you're trying to, shift yourself more into grace. We just did an episode. I have a friend that does this podcast. Whenever I don't have guests, I do it with him, and
Nice.
we just did a conversation on this quote from Brennan Manning.
Mm,
He says, "I've decided that if I had my life to live over again, I would not only climb more mountains, swim more rivers, and watch more sunsets. I wouldn't only jettison my hot water bottle, raincoat, umbrella, and parachute and raft. I would not only go barefoot earlier in the spring and stay out later in the fall, but I would devote not one more minute to monitoring my spiritual growth. No, not one."
mm.
And uh yeah, we just talked about that. Like it sort of reminds me, you brought up something actually, sorry. I've been cramming for this conversation, so I've been going through a bunch of your other conversations on your channel. So maybe you didn't say it in this, but I was hearing you say uh, things that are means to ends and the intrinsic versus the um, I don't what did you say? Do you have any idea? The
Like the
intrinsic versus
consequential, maybe.
yeah, yeah, the intrinsic versus the consequential. And so often the spiritual disciplines, I think, get shifted into that well, they are consequential, right? This is why, because these things are maybe both, and we like to split them up as a, as opposites. You're one or
Yeah.
the other, a duality, but it's like they're dual and singular at the same time. And so you have the consequential nature of a practice, but also the intrinsic value of the practice, which is separate from the consequences, which is so crazy because uh, yeah, I mean
Yeah.
that's another American myth that runs deep in our veins is like, you know, if you do the right thing, then you'll get the right stuff. And that's just human, right? Like
Yeah.
you can see that all through history that many cultures were sort of founded on that. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I read that quote because I think it's it's connected to so much of what you were describing there at the end, I think, of the freedom from reality. Like our modernist view is that everything is quantifiable and everything is, I guess, like intelligible, rational, something like that. And we've been living in that space, swimming in that water for so long that like my impulse when I wanted to start this podcast was I wanted to do something like modern wisdom, but
Mm,
modern religion or something like that because I do believe in God. And that's the only thing that like Chris doesn't believe in, I guess. I don't he just doesn't have religious faith. And
yeah.
yet in him I see so much of the this we were talking about Vervaeke referencing to different phenomenologies of like he's talking about the good. That's what Chris is talking about. Wisdom. He's talking about
Yeah.
wisdom. An ancient
Yeah.
like it says in the Bible that wisdom was with God when he created the earth. So like you have this
Yeah.
rich tradition that he's just pulling on the the frayed end that's made its way through the Enlightenment and to him in this Western world, and yet it's still so valuable to so many people because there's I don't like absolute truth in what he's saying, almost no matter what he's saying, because of his desire to find what's good and what's true and what's used like beautiful and of good report.
Yeah.
I'm quoting scripture on purpose here. It's probably upsetting to some people, but these are the things that like we're, what else, what the hell else would you rather do? Because
Yeah.
because it's how we were made to interact with these things. And like you and I, we would talk about this forever. Other people, like I was gonna make a joke about it's really hard not to watch football when I'm a Bills fan. Josh Allen, he's poetry in motion. It's a beautiful thing. Uh, but truly, I don't think he's supposed to be having these conversations with you and I. Uh, he
Mm,
he is perfectly. free to live in uh, the world that he lives in and be a part of everything, you know. He's a great guy.
Mm.
He just got married. They're expecting a baby. So he's got his whole thing. And I don't know if he cares at all who Heidegger is, you know. That's not important. But it's like
Yeah.
the good and his relationship with it, that is that is significant even to you and me, you know, like sort
Yeah.
of on the other end of being related to the good. Anyway, I don't know if that was coherent, but just we
Yeah.
all we all are drawn to this thing, you know, and in some ways, maybe it's like the disordering of loves. This is a philosophical concept, but that you would just prioritize things out of order. That can happen to all of us, right? And we all do that all the time. Uh, we've all sinned and fallen short, but that glory of God that is the goodness is like calling to each one. And I don't know. I'm excited to talk to you today and my new TLC friends and anyone that will have these types of conversations. That's the language that's my football game, right? But uh
Yeah.
I guess I'm just thinking of maybe like a Petersonian, you know, like why do we like to watch Josh Allen throw the ball between three defenders to the receiver? It's because that's like symbolic of he's doing the thing. You can abstract that onto every single aspect of your life. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah. 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 Well, so let's see if I can tie a couple of things together here. I mean, one of the things, right, we talked about this idea of, you know, becoming what you could be, right? Tempting, which I think of when I find myself doing it poorly, it seems like I'm trying hard to accomplish something. When it seems to go well is when I'm not trying hard and I'm just sort of allowing grace to actually shape me into what God has designed me to be, which is part of the, and that's really part of the trick, right? The efforting. Efforting is really like the thing there. And then on the other side, sort of the grateful acceptance of grace just where you are without and sort of being fully present without sort of aiming towards a particular ideal in the future. And there's a, there's something about goodness can only be experienced, I think, because goodness is, right? As soon as you've tried to form it into something, then you're attempting to convey truth by means of beauty if you're doing it well, but you can't actually catch goodness because you can't catch experience.
mm,
And so like, when you and goodness of course falls in a hierarchy, right? And like so I think you're totally right. Like when you see someone who's excellent at anything and you perceive that goodness, like it does something for your soul. And that's why, I mean, I was thinking yesterday, I was watching the Broncos game. I'm a Broncos fan. And
sorry.
maybe that's part of why I'm more disappointed in football today. Uh,
Yeah, you're throwing it out. You're changing your ways.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I in 2015 I watched every Broncos game when they won the Super Bowl. And I think since 2015 I've only watched really a handful of games maybe that I've watched the whole way through,
I've
whether they're
had
doing well or poorly. So,
I've had this thought, like, I think I could kick the habit of watching Buffalo Bills football if they won the Super Bowl. Because what else is there to do? You know, like you see
yeah.
Philadelphia fans, they're miserable because they're probably
Yeah.
not going to win the Super
Yeah.
Bowl.
Yeah. I I think it's so good for anybody to have that like that feeling of winning something that you've been trying really hard to win. I was fortunate to have it in high school. Like my senior year of high school, I was a baseball player and we won the state championship my senior year. And it was, of course, it was the thing that we had been trying so hard for and failing at for 4 years. So it was this tremendously ecstatic moment. And then I will never forget on the bus home. like very clearly having the feeling of ennui. Just
Mm,
okay, what's next?
yeah.
Like where do I go from here?
Yeah.
Um,
Did you see,
Turned out my
sorry,
baseball career didn't really go anywhere, but
uh
that's
you'll be able to throw with your son. Uh
right.
did you see Scotty Scheffler? Do you know who that is?
Yeah, yeah,
Uh
yeah,
did you see the clip of him after winning? That
yeah.
that was
That was a
so
great yes.
so cool to see because like I feel like the people in the media just I mean like I feel like Scotty was just kind of like transparent about his experience. This is what was
Yeah,
real to him. He went through it, and they can never go through it because they can't golf like he can. Then
yep,
there's really no equivalent for somebody that's like interviewing a great person like that. I mean, they might write a great book or something, but that's still, it's just not the constraints aren't there for them, and so they have no way of dealing with what he's saying because the frame is like not built for it. So they're
yep,
asking sensationalist questions in a, in like a super salient landscape. They need to have the perfect clip from, it was great. That's what they want him to say. It was great, and everybody should try to do
yeah,
this. But he's busting the entire cultural narrative. I mean, it was truly transparent on his
yeah,
part, and it was so beautiful for him to be that icon into that experience. It's like, huh, it's actually completely empty. It's really fun, and he loves it, and it's a good thing to do. But
yeah,
if you make it the top of the hierarchy, it loses all of its value. It
yeah.
completely hollows out. And then Nike, in true capitalist fashion, took the energy from that and turned it into an ad with his son standing with the trophy. And I forget what the copy said, but it was like, it was something about do it for the ones you love or something like that.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
it's really funny because it's like disgusting how they can make that a materialistic capitalist motivation or advertisement, uh and yet they did see what it was. It was transcendent through his
yeah.
actual encounter with victory. Nike.
Well, one of the things, I mean, sports bear a tremendous load. Like they carry a tremendous load for the modern world, right? Like professional sports are, I mean, if you it'd be interesting, actually. I hadn't thought about this before, but it'd be interesting to think about how much of the collective psychosis that we went through with COVID that we're still, I think, trying to recover from,
Hmm.
struggling, I would say, not trying, struggling, is because we lost professional sports for a time too.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, and they were
because I
weird.
think,
They were
and
weird.
they were weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But the law, I mean, professional sports keeps people going. And it also allows people to live with the fact that they're asleep
Hmm.
because it gives us it gives an experience of it gives a genuine and transcendent spiritual experience to you, right? If you are a devoted fan, like you get a transcendent spiritual experience when you go to a game and you if like especially if you go the whole 9 yards and you dress up in the regalia. And I mean, anybody who's been at a sports game where there's a ton of energy, when the spirit's really alive, I mean, it is an incredible event. It's stupendous, really. I mean, I was thinking the other day about whether or not oh, this might be a stretch too far, but I'll leave it at that. But I'll just say I think sports allow us to exist in the modern world without tearing each other apart so far, um, in a really profound way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating. I think politics serves that same role too, to some extent, because nobody's actually involved in politics. Like everybody's their own personal pundit, and Facebook is. replete with examples of the tearing each other apart, but at least it's virtual, it's sort of inconsequential. And I think, yeah, I think maybe even that is part of that Scheffler video. He's just so raw and vulnerable about like what the felt experience actually was, that it's sort of like you get to see behind the curtain, because what you're saying is so true,
Yep.
that the it's almost a willful blindness, like professional wrestling. Like
Yeah.
lots of people
Yeah.
will say that the
Kayfabe.
NFL is rigged, but they still will go. Like
Yeah.
I don't think any of those people stop watching. Lots of people will say the
Oh yeah.
election was rigged, and they still keep watching. It's
Yeah.
it's a thing where it's like, yeah, it's so fascinating. So that's definitely so fascinating to me, because I actually just went to the Bills Browns game yesterday with my brother. It was an early
Nice.
Christmas present because he's a Browns fan, and so we we got to go. Some other people in the family gave us tickets, and we drove to Cleveland.
Nice.
It's like 4 hours, and then drove back. So it felt, I was thinking all of these things, like felt like a pilgrimage, like we're going to
Nice.
this
Yeah.
place.
Great. Yeah.
Uh, it was I was decked out. He was trying to be subtle because he was wearing a Bills sweatshirt because he likes the Bills because they're good, but he likes the Browns, so he put on an orange hat and tried to like blend in. And we sat in the dog pound, so it was like uh, it was mostly Browns fans, although it was probably like 60% Bills fans in the stadium, which was really impressive to see.
Yeah.
So we're there, and you go through the whole game, and everybody's drinking. They have been drinking,
Nice.
in anticipation of the event. So there's these like spirits that are
Yep.
in the people, and then there's specific liturgies of like the national anthem, the halftime entertainment, all of these things. It has like a rhythm,
Yep.
and the fans are invited to participate. Right? There's like little
Oh
games
yeah.
they play during the TV timeouts, and then there's when the Browns, who are sort of like they're priestly, right? They're mediating between the God of
Yep.
victory
Nice.
and the
Nice.
people. They're getting first downs, and so then the announcer says, "That's another Cleveland Browns first down," and the crowd shouts "first down," and then they bark, right? Because
Yep.
that's their thing. And I was like, the barking is so stupid. But then I've been to, many Bills games, and I'll be there singing the silly shout song at the end of it. We scored our touchdown. And so it's really funny to see like Cleveland has their way of doing things, Buffalo has their way of doing things, but we're all doing this thing, and it has nothing to do with like the sport. It would be weird if it was like laboratory experiments or something, but there's a reason that it's like sensational and physical, right? Athletic, I mean. Um, but I think I don't know. I don't know exactly where I'm going with this, but I think that the commonality, like nobody got checked at the door, like, what do you think about football? Like, do you think it's better to run the ball, or do you think you should be a passing offense? Do you think Myles Garrett is the best player in the league, or do you think he's the second best player? There's no like
Yep.
uh intellectual assent to anything that is required for you to participate in this. It's sort of like, well, it's just deeper than that. That's sort of what you're referring to. It's
Yep.
like this is fundamental to us, and so we long for it. So it's not just the soma, like a Brave New World. It's sorry, bump my mic. It's not just the thing that placates us, right? Because I often will think of the end of the Roman Empire, and they would like up the gladiator games and do
Yeah.
all of that.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. I understand that our civilization is dying because football is becoming global. It's not causal, but it is. You can correlate, and uh, and so I see that, but it's again, it's not causal. So what is it like? What is it plugging into? Right? You were talking about
Well,
the philosophy, is the system that you're running. What what
Yeah.
is it plugging into and then running in our systems, do you think?
Yeah. I mean, this is a fun one to this is a super fun one to play with. Yeah, I mean, it's way more functional than the games were in Rome. Like
Hmm.
that's one of the big things. Like football, especially any professional sport, because they all serve the same purpose. But football, since we're talking about football, like it's way more functional, right? You get the violence, you get the competition, you get the victory, but people aren't actually being harmed in it. I mean, people will get hurt, but but they're agreeing to it and they're not trying to kill each other. There's this underlying like, you know, there's the highest spirit, which is football. And then within football, you have the NFL and you have college football and all the layers of football, right? And within the NFL, so I'm doing a hierarchy of spirits here, right? And like within the NFL, you have the Bills and the Browns and everybody else. And each one of those genuinely is a spirit. Like it's very much a principality, right? Like in the Bible, it talks about principalities, or if you read Dionysius or anybody else who gives you sort of the hierarchy of angels, and their spirits tied to a place, right? Have that have a causal purpose related to the place that makes it what it is, right? And so everybody, the Cleveland Browns fans barking, there's something about the Cleveland Browns that is very much like a dog barking at you. Like and it's not just because the people do it, but the people have to do it for it to be that way, right? And you know, I think that sense of like everybody has to have the sense of being connected to a spirit higher than themselves. I think if you don't have that, you become very agitated.
Hmm.
Like, are you familiar with Rene Girard and mimetic desire?
No.
So, um, very like very high utility, or no, what is it? High, like very high value concept and figure. But the idea is basically that you don't really, there's very few things that you want because of the thing itself, right? Some things, right? Like food, water, shelter, those sorts of things. But beyond that, almost everything you don't want it because you actually want it. You want it because you saw someone else wanting it or having it,
Hmm.
right? So it's mimesis. So you want because you see someone else having or wanting. And it's a fundamentally competitive thing, right? And so he talks about the idea of a scapegoat being what allows a community to function. So in a community, everyone is wanting things because everyone else is wanting things. And so you get sort of this bubbling up of agitated, chaotic energy aimed one at another across the whole community, right? And then what you have happen once that reaches a certain threshold, you have a scapegoat, right? Which is where some person, usually a fringe character, often an outsider in his book. Um, let's see, the one I'm most familiar with is I Saw Satan Fall Like Lightning. He tells a myth. He retells a Greek myth where there's this beggar from the outside of town who gets accused of stealing something, and then the whole town like makes him the like he's to blame for everybody's angst. Like there's this huge angst he's to blame for it, and so they just sort of horribly murder him, right? And that has this massive cathartic effect to settle everything down, and you can do it again, right? And so I think really what sports do, professional sports do, is they allow people to genuinely get spiritual connection, which is just inherently necessary, which allows communities to function, et cetera, et cetera. But they also are this stable place for some of that mimetic angst to work itself out, because you do actually like you come into this place, you have Bills fans and you have Browns fans, or better yet, let's hopefully you have like the Yankees Red Sox and they're both really good in the World Series or
Hmm.
in the ALCS, right? Like that sort of environment. And you have half and half the fans in the stadium, and so these two spirits are really duking it out. And everybody's really getting this sort of somebody wins, somebody loses, but there's a cathartic effect of all that energy going into it's an energy sink, is basically what I'm saying. I think it's an energy sink for collective angst.
Yeah, and there's obviously in this scenario you laid out, like there's a hero, the victor, and then the player of the game, the guy that made the big play, and then on the losing team's side, there's the player that let the team down. Uh,
Yep.
Unfortunately, as a Bills fan, I've been on the losing side of things, so we have several examples of that over the years, and then you do have sort of like the heel, like Mahomes plays the heel in for the Chiefs, and so it's just like you keep it's literally all we talk about, right? Like all the sports radio
Yeah.
is just who do
Yeah.
we blame? The coach, the
Yeah.
GM, the quarterback, the receivers, the defense,
Yeah.
or the other team, the referees, what is
Yeah.
it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's so
Yeah.
interesting. So you said something about like the it's a truly spiritual experience or something like that. And I guess without being too obtuse, I do want to kind of shift into a conversation about the church because
Yeah.
I think that you're right, and we are going through the trauma of 2020 still to this day. It's definitely maybe football is sort of like spiritual bypassing for that or something, like and politics and all of the other things. We're just trying to get right back to it. But like the world is falling apart. Like if you pay attention to corruption, I mean, that's just an endless list of Google search results. Like you could not exhaust the list of things that are corrupted. And so that's obviously too big of a problem. The world is too big of a problem. So I think people like you and I have maybe found a lot of uh, a lot of I don't know what the right word is. We've found solace in Jordan Peterson refocusing on the individual, right? And so uh for me, that's a really good thing. I've been like putting my life together. Actually, since 2020, my life got disrupted right then, and then I reconnected with I really connected for the first time in a meaningful way with Jesus at that point and began to follow
Mm.
him.
Mm.
I had a lot of background context for that, but not practice or, yeah, not practice. And so I began to
Yeah.
practice. And since
Yeah.
then, it hasn't all been up and to the right, but certainly things that are bad have fallen away and things that were broken or wounded have healed in me and in others. And there's lots more to go, but it's been sort of me focused. And it's
Mm.
increasingly not that way, right? Because I got married as a result of this conversion. Jesus sort of set me on a path to bump into my wife in New Mexico. That was pretty cool. Uh,
Nice.
and then uh, we have a son, and so it's increasingly not about me, which is really good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really, really good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the I guess the idea is like, how much is it about me, and how much is it not about me? That's the
Yeah.
question.
Oh man. Yeah. Nice. Nice. Wow. That's a really good setup. Oof. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. So, I mean, what comes up for me there is like, if, if you're lost, you have to, in order to get right again and to be found, like you have to pay attention to yourself, right? In the sense of like, well, I am the thing that's lost. So like, I'm the thing that needs to get right first, right? So there is something correct about that in a sense. But then like once you've honed in, right? Especially once I don't really know at what, you know, once you've been baptized, once you've really begun to turn and follow Christ, once you've genuinely had a turn of metanoia, especially, now we're talking in an explicitly Christian sense. There's a turning around of the arrow of relevance, right?
Hmm.
Like it's not so much about me and how am I relevant. and it's more about others and really Christ, right? And Christ in others in that sense. Like it's much easier in a way to understand when it's not exactly other people as individuals that you're serving, although you are. That is how it has to actually happen in the particular moment. But really, you're serving Christ, and if you're serving Christ in the other person, that seems to be, at least for me, the place that when I understand it that way, it helps me to love other people better. Let me say that.
Mm.
Um, and and I mean, it's still a little bit like you still have to sort of work from the position that you're in, right? Like you can't go just solve all the world's problems if you don't have, if that's not what's been given to you. You have to work from where you are. But I think, man, the church is such a mystery because I mean, it is to me anyway. In some sense, this question of the individual versus, I mean, you can say the collective, but well, that's probably right, actually. It's the individual versus the collective. And then there's something above that, right? There's a paradox there because there really is no such thing as an individual, right? Like you can talk about things that are relevant to this point, right? Here and go from there. But it doesn't make sense to talk about Ken at all unless you talk about Elise, my wife, and Oregon and all the things that are related to me. There is no individual thing that is Ken. And there's also, if you think of just collective, just people as, if you just work from universals and just speak about people within categories, it does it dehumanizes and makes something tremendously, it'll make you tremendously foolish, first of all. Like there's a lot of people that I think that have been genuinely trying to do good for categories of people and have thus been causing a lot of evil for people in specific. Um, and there's something that's more mysterious than that, that is the place those two things come together, where the paradox is actually lived, which is, I think, something like the church, which only occurs within communion in community, right? There's this becoming of oneself by beholding oneself in the other, and the other becoming himself by beholding himself in you, and both of you therefore becoming Christ,
Mm.
and that being spun up into um, like that can move between people such that you have whole bodies of people acting together. I mean, for me personally, like I'm, yeah, I mean, it, like you said, if you saw that video with Matthew and Daniel, it's like very much between the three churches of the Protestant, Orthodox, and Catholic. And I see beauty in all of them, and I poke my nose in the door of each of them with some regularity. And mostly what I've found is that I watch who I become as a result of those things. Um, and then I tend to go more to the one that I like, how like it seems like I'm becoming better. But then again, like who's the one deciding, right? Then it's me who's
Mm.
judging.
Mm.
It's me who's the one who's saying that's what's better. And so it's yeah, I mean it's sort of like, I guess, my problem for right now. Um, but yeah, there's a few things. There's a few initial thoughts.
Yeah. I like the idea of like, how is it affecting you? Who are you becoming? Being aware of that. Have you read The Life of Pi?
No.
Oh, it's a good book. It's on Jordan Peterson's reading list, and one summer
Oh,
I was
nice.
like, I'm going to read all of these. I didn't get very far,
Nice.
but I read a bunch of them, and
Nice.
it's so good. So he's from India, so he's Hindu, like cultural Hindu. But he tries to embrace it, like I think he comes into contact with a spiritual leader of that tradition, and he tries to like embrace it and find God, and he does. And then they're on vacation, and he goes into the church, the Christian church that is there because he's like, "What's this place?" And so he's sort of inquisitive, and he finds it, and he um, he kept poking at the priest, like with his Hindu objections to Christianity, and the priest kept loving him, and so he met God and has an experience. And then he goes into the mosque, and I think he was working for a guy that was maybe Muslim, and they're doing their job. And then he says, "Hold on, I have to stop and pray." And so he prays, and he's like intrigued. And so then he starts to practice Islam. And so he's functionally practicing all three simultaneously for a series, and everyone else is having problems with his practices, right? So the priest is fighting with his parents because his parents want him to be Hindu, and the you know imam, or I don't know the right words, but the Muslim is fighting with the Christian, and so everybody else is fighting, but not him. Pi is fine, and he's living his life in total devotion to God in these three various ways, and it's so compelling, or so, that's the wrong word. It's like it just it makes you stop. Like, wait a second, what is happening? And so obviously you're circling around, very like even more specifically. It's not just the Abrahamic gods, but it's you know Jesus, and then the various interpretations of Jesus. And I guess I don't I don't know what problems those groups have with each other per se. Like I know I'm not supposed to pray to Mary. I know that. But I I guess I don't know why in actuality, because I think at this point, I don't know. I need to do more church history or something because I feel like it's so relevant to where we are specifically right now with all of these things. And Protestantism has the disadvantage of being the newest kid on this block. So it's like uh, there really isn't any authority to appeal to in the form of tradition. It's very truncated. And so you have like a 200-year-old doctrine, and it rules a certain segment of, Protestantdom. And like, I'm like, well, what did they think 203 years ago about this? Like, what about that? And it's just not treated as relevant, like, well, I don't know,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter, right? This is what we think now. And so that's just a weird tone, I feel like, to have these types of conversations. Because even just going back to what we said about John Vervaeke, like he's pulling from philosophers that predate Jesus. And not to say that predating anybody is like the sign of authority, but just like they're human beings that have been dealing with this for that long, right? And
Yeah.
so if
Yeah.
you want to go just on that level, which I do want to go on that, like I want to analyze these things on the
Yep.
level of shared experience. It's something I've written about and definitely talked about on the podcast. Like if we can't share experience, I don't know what we can share, because like obviously we all have our own subjective experiences, but it is, I think, the mosaic of those, or there might be a better interpretation. It's like a jam session musically. Like we all know the tune, but we all play it differently. And so how can we harmonize, to put it, sort of in a cliche way? Because it's so silly to me that I did my Life of Pi example of three very different religious experiences, and this one person, he's a character in a fictional book, but he's harmonizing between the three of them, and they're vastly different, metaphysics. But then we come to we have this singular point of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, a real person, and then, I mean, just a massive explosion out into, well, now we all hate each other because of him. Like, what is happening? Why can't we just take what's good from all of these things?
Yeah. 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 I mean, it's wild. I mean, a couple things there. It's like one, I've thought that I've come up with original ideas or original answers to problems before, and then once I finally get around to reading somebody who actually understood something, I find out that not only did they think of my solution, they knew why it was wrong and came up with a better one. Um, I mean, and that's just I like there's so many of the questions, like especially like things that I've personally been involved with dealing in Protestant churches. It's like, man, if you had just read St. Maximus
Hmm.
or or John of Damascus or Gregory of Nyssa or one of these guys or Augustine even, like if you actually had understood them within the tradition, if you could hear the words they were saying, this wouldn't be an issue for you.
Hmm.
And yeah, I mean, it's interesting that I think a lot about the idea of Christ and Antichrist and the way that Christianity is such a paradox in the sense that it's bound so many people so tightly together with so much goodness and so much love. I mean, the history of the church, as much as modernity has done, and they have done quite an impressive job of smearing church history to make it look like a, a dark past of so many wars, which are present, and so much bloodshed, which is there. Um, there's also I find that it's tremendously outweighed by so much goodness and care and genuine charity that it's almost mind-boggling to understand. But there also has been so much bloodshed from the beginning. There's been so much bloodshed and so much and I think that's sort of the spirit of Antichrist that follows right behind Christ and is just always, muddying the water and creating division and so much of it comes back to pride, right? Like the people mistaking themselves or and I there is something in the traditional side of things where it feels like there is a mistaking of the church and especially, it's always their church, whether you're Orthodox or Catholic, right? Mistaking the church for the thing, right? And I think that's one thing that most Protestants have going for them is like they're less apt to mistake their church for the thing itself, right? Um, and forget that they're a gateway. They're attempting to be a gateway um, to to Christ, and that it's not actually up to the church. Um, I don't know. That's just one piece.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I guess, I mean, just in my own experience, I don't have a ton of experience with Orthodox or Catholic churches, like the people that make them up and the thoughts and the rituals and any of those things. Um, but I understand what you're saying about the advantage of Protestantism being almost like immediate connection to Christ is like that's huge. That's a huge thing. I
Yep.
think you were talking
Yep.
about this with
Yep.
Daniel and Matthew that
Yep.
um there's a both and I think we talk about the other church, whatever it is, in such a well, it's just a straw man type of way. We know all of the reasons that we don't do that, here, wherever you're doing something in regards to Jesus. And yet you don't know any of the reasons why they do it. And I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
I think that
What
might be
I've
the
had
go for it.
Well, I was just gonna say, I mean, I've had a profound experience of that, right? Like, because I grew up very, very Protestant, almost probably I would say at least as far as I understand Protestantism, as Protestant as you can get. Um, and so for me to begin to come around to seeing from an angle that the Catholic Church for in specific looks really beautiful. Like there's occasions where it's so tremendously beautiful that I really want to enter into communion there. Um, but then there are pieces that still drive me away from it too. Um, and I go through cycles. And I've found myself going through cycles because I guess, in some sense I'm a little bit stuck because I don't really know how to make the decision, right? Um, and even sometimes I think it's a bit of a mistake to even frame it that way because um, sometimes I'm not sure if it isn't a bit of a category error to think of church as this in the way that framing tends to think of it, um, as if it is something uh, that is not organic, and
Mm,
in some sense, even more unmediated than the Protestants think it is. Like this mediated versus unmediated thing. Um, you know, I you know, it's a very Protestant way of saying it, but if you take it really, really seriously, that where two or three are gathered together in my name, there I am. You know, I don't, I don't know why that doesn't count as church, right? Like, does this count as church? I don't know why not, right? And I think there's higher and lower levels of church then, right? There's more and less beautiful or compelling or stable, might be even better, right?
yeah.
Ways of doing church. Like one of the things that's clear about, especially the Orthodox Church, right? The way that the Orthodox liturgy is, it's been the same for like 1500 years. It's
Mm.
exactly the same, right? The same words, the same songs, the same chants. Like, they're doing the same thing for 1500 years. That's an incredibly stable structure. Um, and especially, I think, in today's moment where, for those of us that have begun to feel the shakings of the Tower of Babel in which we live, like bumping into something that has survived into the roots of the current Tower of Babel that we live in is very attractive.
I have one thought that I wrote down on this subject. I'd like to bring it up, and uh, if
Nice. Let's
do you
do it.
have enough for
Yeah,
me
that's
to
fine.
do? Okay.
Yeah.
Um, so I was listening to you talk to DC Schindler, and you brought up um, J.K. Rowling downloading Harry Potter, right? It's this experience of uh, an author, but there's a story that's being communicated through them. And
Yeah.
um, so you talked a little about the like let's say top down, right? Because God is in heaven, he's the top, let's say.
Yeah.
So it's top down through the person. Um, but then what I was thinking is this connected with all of the other things that I was listening to you talk about with the church and what I think about often with regards to the church is like it I'm not sure how to like pursue a course of action, what path to take. I feel like you're at the same place. And also I wanted to say you, you said one time that you felt like you were not addressing this question in the right register. So it's like a you thing. We talked about the frame that you're approaching. Like, do I have to make a choice specifically? Like, how is it that you would do that, but just not approaching it in the right register in the sense that you're thinking of it mentally. And I think that's a way that God created you to think about, like to interact
Yeah.
with things. Same, me too. And so, uh, how do you how do you shift into that register? But also, when you think of J.K. Rowling creating a story, this is something I think Tom Petty had a quote about it recently. Like he'd just stick his antenna out and see what was out there. And my dad is a songwriter, and he says the same thing. And not the antenna thing, but just that it comes from someone
Yep.
somewhere beyond him. And uh, so that I think is a little bit of this like God gives the growth, right? So you can tend to the garden, you can tend to the tree, but like God gives the growth is the delivery of what it is that's coming to you that you then create. So there's that. But then there also is the creating. Like I think you even talked with David about the way that you and maybe it was with Jonathan Pageau. So it's the skills necessary to create the art that is being transmitted to you. And so there's this both
Yeah.
and from the bottom up, you need to have the necessary discipline to be able to sort of instantiate what it is that's coming to you from the top down. And so
Yeah.
to me, it feels like that's very significant because there is this vertical connection and we must build up. But then it's also like the way that it manifests in us is sort of horizontal. Like you have to be what I am. You need to do these 1500 years old liturgies or else. It's like, well, hold on. What's the goal? And I think that's maybe more organic. And then I'll give it to you to close here.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think you said it really well there, actually. Like there's the problem of structure, right? Like if you embody a structure and you participate and practice a structure, that's all well and good as long as what that structure is doing is preparing you to be a better servant. But it's not good when that structure becomes the thing that you're so focused on that you completely miss the spirit speaking to you. And, or even worse, if some piece of that structure is actually inhibiting that signal from coming through. And there's I don't know, like it's really hard to know, I think, if that's happening or even when that's happening. I think it's actually a really good way of saying, like, currently I'm in a part of my cycle where I've briefly I've very recently exited the being pulled very close. It's like an orbital cycle thing toward the church,
Yeah.
right? Like I sort of orbit closer, and I'm like sort of shooting out of an orbit right now. Like I was pretty close, and then I'm coming back out because I started to notice more of this. Like I started to feel as if some of the structure that I was getting closer to was actually beginning to inhibit and close something down about my ability to be in the world, about my ability to be with my children, about my like there was
Mm.
something that was darkening my ability to love properly, that probably is more about me than the church, I'm going to claim, just because it's
I
it's
totally
not a
agree with
it's
that.
not a piece of argument, but
I
like
I don't know your story, but I'm just gonna say the orbit thing is for real, and I can attest to that experience, and also that it is 100%, well, not really, but it's relational. But I take the 80%. I'll take that.
yeah, 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 yeah. Well, hey man, it's been great to it's this has been great.
Yes,
Feel like
I
there's a lot more to say about, especially the church here, that we
yes,
haven't gotten
yes.
to.
I'll read the Schindler book, and you read Willard, and then we'll come back at some point in the future. Uh, we don't have to do the homework. I look forward to it and appreciate the time that you gave me today. Thanks so much.